Chapter 13, The Language of the Soul. Zailm, my son, thou heardst the narration of the Saldu Lolix. As thou knowest, it is from things arisen out of the occurrences by her related that thou goest on a mission to Suern. It is not a hard task merely to make return of acknowledgement for the gifts presented, and disavowal of our intent to keep as prisoners the people whom Rai Ernan sent hither. We will give them asylum, but Rai Ernan must not think that we permit their presence for any purpose except to do him a favor. Concerning other business, on the morrow it is Rai Wallen's pleasure that thou attendest at Agako. But wilt thou not remain here this night? My father, I fain would stay, but is it not duteous that I go unto my mother this night and set her at ease? She hath an infirmity of nervousness that cannot well withstand my absence at night. Thou art right, Zailm, yet soon it must be arranged that thy mother be domiciled in some pleasant part of this Asticathlon, so that thou shalt be under thy father's roof at night. I then departed from the prince and from the sweet girl who had been with us during a part of the evening, and went forth into the night. The rain had ceased, and the clouds rolling across the sky in sullen blackness had but one rift in their gloomy mass. In this single rent shone a great white star, which at times flashed red. As I looked at it down close to the horizon, seeming that moment risen from old ocean's phosphorescent waters, visible from Menac's heights, I thought of the past, for this star had flashed brightly upon me while I awaited the sunrise on Pitak Rock. So many years it seemed since that morn. Today this star is called Sirius. We named it Korietos. As I looked upon it, it seemed an omen auspicious of success, past, present, and to come. Raising my hands toward it, I murmured, Phyris sua pertos, which is, star, O star of my life. It seems a little singular that the language, which is translated thus, should have a similar sound and import as today used by the people of my home planet. At that old day, I raised my hands aloft and exclaimed, Star, O star of my life. Today I turn awhile from precipitating this history in astral word things, turn to my alter ego and say, Phyrissa. This is her own dear name and signifies star of my soul. Peculiar is it not that 12,000 years should pass, and I, member of another race of human beings, in another mansion, find so little change in the language of the soul. Let us make our attunement with the God Star Sirius by singing to Surya. This is going to be a very deep meditation, and therefore I'm asking you to be seated, only because when you stand, you tend to think you are singing a song, and when we sit, we can more enter into meditation. 480. We'll have an invocation. I ask you to close your eyes, meditate in your heart. See the white light in your heart, a white sphere. Visualize this ray of light going to the God Star Sirius, connecting you to the seat of galactic government, to the heart of the great Buddha, Surya, to the heart of Cuzco. O mighty I Am Presence, intensify thy sacred fire in our hearts. O Holy Christ Self, descend upon us. Place your electronic presence over us and lock your chakras into our own. I call for the strong tie to be reestablished in our souls, through the Christ Self of us, through our mighty I Am Presence, our own God Star. To the God Star Sirius in this moment, as we salute the great cosmic council and the 24 elders. and all who are represented there from the great central sun. Beloved God Surya, we pour forth intense love to your heart as we visualize the blue fire now forming in our hearts, and a Tai Chi turning in our hearts as the white fire, blue fire sun, glistening and sparkling as diamond and sapphire, emitting the great light of thy central sun station. Therefore, this our meditation, we sing and project our love and send our rays of light, that our voices might be heard on Sirius and throughout the earth in the hearts of light bearers and throughout a cosmos in this moment, that we do give adoration to the great central sun through the focus of the God Star. Beloved mighty I Am Presence, I call for the mighty circle of fire around this room, the solar ring, the tube of light, the violet flame in the center. I call upon the great victory of the God flame. O Alpha and Omega, bind all that is not of the light that would impede this attunement and this meditation. From the heart of God and the great central sun, I send forth the call to earth. From the heart of earth, I send forth the call to Sirius. Let the triangle of light be formed, O God, as we are centered in thy living flame, white fire, blue fire. Father, Mother God, take us and receive us.
O Masters of the love ray, Surya, blessed one of God, teacher of old, beloved Cuzco, for your sustaining radiance we adore. Our gratitude is flowing, you hold the balance for the earth. Your focus in the isle of Suva, and in the brightness of the central sun. Surya, dear from Sirius, the God Star presence of each one. From seven spheres, oh come and seal us in the immaculate the God design. Oh radiate from Sirius, the lightning angels of God's love, and in this hour give cosmic balance to usher in the coming golden age. We thank you for your service and for the court of sacred fire, directing man to holy Christhood, there since the glory of the land of moon. O flood the earth with wisdom, bless lords of mind and lords of form, transmute all shadow into beauty, your cosmic purpose forward be reborn. O Masters, charge your love rays, the fullness of the mind of God, for love becomes the holy radiance, and universal love is power too. For love becomes the action, and love becomes the Christ, and love brings forth the song and music, and lingers in the heart the whole day long. O Masters, blaze your love rays to children of the dawning age, for love is universal beauty, an altar of a God reality. The flame of love exalted, the flame of love it we raise our voices, Father, outpouring love and holy praise. To spheres of light and bliss eternal, for gift of life and consciousness always.
Beloved mighty I am presence, I call for the sealing of our hearts now and forever, through the heart of God harmony with the heart of the God Star. Beloved Surya, beloved Cuzco, place your electronic presence over us now for the purification, intensification of the light within us. May the God flame expand and consume all discord, sin, disease, and death, all negative spirals within any or each one's being. I call for the full power of the God Star to replace all negative spirals by the full power of the positive spirals of the mind of God in the cosmic Christ and in the cosmic Buddha, Surya. O Surya, O Surya, thy love is a ruby ray fire in our hearts. It is wonderful to know that those who lived on Atlantis recognized Sirius as a point of contact with God. Perhaps not as a contact with the Great White Brotherhood, but certainly, as Zailm says, as a good omen. Today we recognize Sirius as our point of contact with our home in the great central sun. As the focus of the great central sun in our sector of the galaxy, it is the seat of galactic God government of the Great White Brotherhood. Sirius, as you know, is also the retreat of the Buddha Surya. There is the court of the sacred fire where souls face the 24 elders and their final judgment before the court of the sacred fire. Sirius is the brightest star in the heavens. As you know, the Ascended Masters call it the God Star, whereas astronomers refer to it as the Dog Star because it is in the constellation Canis Major that is shaped like a dog. Canis Major means in Latin, greater dog. Sirius is also a binary star, which means that it consists of two stars revolving around a common center of gravity. Sirius A, the brighter of the two stars, is a blue-white star. It is 23 times as bright as our sun. Sirius B is a white dwarf star with low luminosity. Sirius is 8.6 light years from Earth, which means it takes the light of Sirius 8.6 years to reach Earth, or so is the scientists' theory at this time. As a comparison, they say it takes the light from our own sun 8 minutes to reach Earth. Sirius was known to the ancients as the Royal One, the Royal One. Its name is generally thought to be derived from the Greek word for sparkling or scorching. The name in Arabic, Al-Shira, is so similar to its name in Egyptian, Persian, Greek, and other languages that one 19th century astronomer thought they might have had a common ancient source, possibly the Sanskrit Surya, meaning the shining one, the sun. In Hindu lore and religion, Surya is the sun or sun god. Astrologers call Sirius a fixed star. Stars change their position along the zodiac very slowly, about 1 degree in every 72 years. Because of their imperceivable movement in the heavens, the ancients referred to the stars as fixed stars. They referred to the planets, which are closer to Earth and therefore appear to move quickly across the heavens, as wandering stars. Astrologers recognize that fixed stars have powerful influences, but they disagree over how to interpret them. Authorities on the matter say that fixed stars are not primary influences, but work through or modify the influences of the sun, the moon, and the planets. Vivian Robson is the author of a book called The Fixed Stars and Constellations in Astrology. Here we read, "It may be taken as a fairly well-established rule that the stars do not operate alone, except perhaps in those cases where they are situated on the angles, that is, the ascendant and the midheaven, and that their chief effect is transmitted by the planets. They seem to form an underlying basis upon which the horoscope is built, and if a planet fall upon a star, its effect is greatly magnified. Various astrologers say that when Sirius is well placed in a chart, it gives honors, wealth, fame, and commercial success. But Sirius is also associated with danger and violence. The position of Sirius in the conceptional and natal charts of the United States shows that this nation has the potential and the mandate to embody the government and the mother culture of the God Star. The United States conceptional sun is at 13 degrees 19 minutes Cancer, the mother sign. It is conjoined Sirius, which is currently at 13 degrees 56 minutes Cancer. As you know, a conjunction is an astrological aspect in which two or more celestial bodies, such as a planet or star, occupy the same degree of the zodiac. A conjunction does not have to be exact. The bodies may be anywhere from 2 to 10 degrees away from each other, depending on which celestial bodies are conjoined. On July 4th, 1776, the day the United States was conceived, Sirius was at exactly 11 degrees Cancer, conjoined the United States conceptional sun. The conjunction of Sirius to the conceptional sun shows that the United States is destined to embody not only the God government of Sirius, but also the mother culture of Sirius. As the sign of the mother, Cancer rules culture and the impulse to nurture and protect. Sirius moves through each sign of the zodiac in about 2150 years. During its slow transit of Cancer, it amplifies Cancerian matters. The conjunction of the United States conceptional sun and Sirius in Cancer shows that America has the potential to be a repository for the culture of the mother from Sirius. Thus, the United States could express its identity, represented by the sun, by embodying the government and the mother culture of Sirius. The Sun-Sirius connection falls in the 7th house of interaction with foreign nations. This placing shows that the United States has the responsibility and opportunity to bring the government and culture of Sirius to the nations of the world. America has lost the vision of this responsibility, this mission, this dharma. The second contact between Sirius and the astrology of the United States falls in the United States natal chart. Sirius forms a conjunction to the United States natal moon at 16 degrees 35 minutes Cancer. You recall the date of this birth chart of the nation is April 30th, 1789. Sirius forms a conjunction to the United States natal moon at 16 degrees 35 minutes Cancer. The moon rules the sign of Cancer, and this conjunction restates a theme established in the conceptional chart. The United States has the potential to embody the mother culture of Sirius. The conjunction of Sirius and the United States natal moon takes place in the United States natal 11th house of Congress, social innovation, and national goals. This placing shows that it is a national priority to embody the God government and mother culture of Sirius. This configuration also indicates that the embodiment of the government and culture of Sirius would be done through laws passed by Congress as an expression of the will of the people, who should have an intuitive sense of the political culture of Sirius. The 11th house has an Aquarian substructure. Thus, the American people could lay the foundation for and see the blossoming of Aquarian age communities. This is undoubtedly the key Aquarian community in North America, if not for the entire planet. And we must remember that that Aquarian community takes its light directly from the heart of Sirius. You should learn how to identify Sirius in the heavens and make eye contact with Sirius as often as you are outside at night and can see the stars. It's very important. When you do so and you meditate upon that, and the rays of the star pass through your eyes, you can actually feel the vibration of Sirius if you have the attunement. Contrasting the United States chart, Sirius makes no important contacts in the natal chart of the Soviet Union. Sanat Kumara has given instruction on the important connection that sons of God have to Sirius. In his series entitled The Opening of the Seventh Seal, in his October 14th, 1979 Pearl of Wisdom, he gives us this teaching. Beloved of the Lamb, in the midst of unveiling the Word and opening the seven-sealed book, I have brought to you the message of the Lord Christ, spoken unto the 11 just before he was received up into heaven and sat on the right hand of God. This message, included in the 16th chapter of the Gospel of Mark, though indefinite in its human origin, is most certainly of the origin divine. And lo, the Lord, the I am that I am, incarnate in Jesus Christ, returned in the hour of his ascension to the great white throne, to the court of the sacred fire midst the 24 elders, and to the seat of authority of the Ancient of Days. It is the seat of God government of the galaxies. It is the seat whence the sons of God descend and ascend in their coursings and their missions to the children of God scattered throughout the galaxies. Pinpointed in time and space, this seat of the hierarchical order of the sons of God and his heavenly hosts is the God Star Sirius. This star of great outer magnitude is but the sign of the inner sun behind the sun, and the coordinate in this sector of the cosmos of the great central sun of all suns. Sirius, however, is a reference point. It is a point for your meditation upon the God consciousness of the spheres. For within the nuclei of star centers is a law of harmony that governs all of cosmos. Meditation upon this law and upon the physical representation of this law, specifically in the God Star Sirius, is a connecting point to souls of earth with inner threads of light and cords that bind the soul to higher dimensions of cosmic consciousness ensouled by Elohim. Thus we counsel you, beloved of the Lamb, to move in your meditation from the outer manifestation of universal principles to the inner realization of the void of which they are the sign and the symbol. The physical composition of Sirius and its binary star is like so many other stars. When we speak of the God Star, we speak of a plane of consciousness where life has accelerated to etheric perfection and to the octaves of light beyond the highest frequencies, yet within the range of what is called matter. The planes of heaven beyond the planes of time and space are exalted in the God Star through the God consciousness of the vast being known as Surya. Surya, the great guru, and his Chela, the ascended master Cuzco, are the ensouling divinities of these 2 points of light that move as one, as Alpha and Omega in a positive-negative polarity. Within the spiral staircase of the planes of heaven, ensouled by them, Enoch was shown the beauties and the mysteries of a life far, far beyond the earthy, into which the children of Adam had descended. From the God Star, Enoch had descended, and to it he ascended. It is the home star of the messengers and the avatars who have one and all come to earth, bearing the light of the mother star, Chakra, to fan the fires of love on the heart's altars of earth's evolutions. Why do I speak to you of Sirius, O my children? I speak to you for the awakening of your souls to the memory of the Ancient of Days, and our togetherness in the vast millenniums and in the forever fastnesses of the Almighty. To put you in contact with the inner light of Sirius is my office. As the mediator of that light, I am the bearer of comfort to your souls, who mourn the loss of the light of Mother and who are now ready to reestablish the tie to the great white throne, the seat of the great white brotherhood whence you descended so long ago. This is the hour of the preparation for the ascent. Since last I wrote to you before the autumn equinox, one among your members was taken by God in the ritual of the Ascension, 'neath the rod of Serapis Bey to the court of the sacred fire. Amen. A soul returned to the point of divine origin. Her ascent is the weaving of a spiral staircase, a ladder of light from your heart to the heart of the God Star. And what do you see but numberless angels of the Nameless One ascending and descending this ladder of light? These angels carry your meditations of the Mother, your powerful prayers, imploring the Lord for deliverance and salvation unto his people. And the angels descending carry the authority of the word from the office of the Lamb who is worthy. It is here in the court of the sacred fire that I, the Ancient of Days, receive each son and daughter of God whose earthly record is stamped, mission accomplished. Thus I have received the Lord Jesus and each and every soul who has mastered the inner blueprint of life by acceleration into the God flame, that is the center of the blueprint and the origin whence it came. I speak to you of the ascension and of ascension's power, for that very ascension and that very power are for your daily affirmation of the word. And by the perfection of that word will return to you out of the void of the God Star, your own ascension in the light, and the power it confers is yours to transfer to the lesser lights of the universes. Maitreya spoke of Jesus' training on the God Star in his dictation given October 14th, 1973. Please listen to it now. And do you know the origin of that word Sirius? It comes from the God Star, Surya. Surya, Sirius, and thus, precious hearts, you have heard of the ancient record, whereby it is said that no one ever saw Jesus smile or laugh, nor is this recorded. I ask you why. It is because of his training on the God Star. Jesus had an inner joy and a sense of divine happiness, but he never for 1 second lost that attunement with the great God Star. He kept about his Father's business, lest in a frivolous moment, in an off-guarded moment, one of these little ones might not have the force field of his protection and his shield. Therefore, when you see the sternness of the Master's face, when you see the discipline of the law, realize that if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly appear? If in the right use of the law, you just come under the line and under the law, then it is worth being serious about your calling, your election, and your mission. I charge you then to regard life as a moment-by-moment opportunity to glorify the Christ, to give birth to the Christ. Waste not the hours or the moments. Let time and space count. Let it be said of keepers of the flame that every moment they spent in their final embodiment upon earth was spent in the service of man, in the glory of God, and in keeping the health, the sanity, the purity of the 4 lower bodies to maintain that service 24 hours a day. We will continue with our teachings from Surya and Cuzco tomorrow. Thank you. Beloved mighty Surya and Cuzco, keep us in your flame and arc of light, one with Astrea and purity, and the mighty ray of oscillation from this altar to the great central sun. We call for the binding of the false hierarchies, who are the perversion of the Divine Mother in Sirius and in Venus. We call for the taking of these false hierarchies and those who stand over them, and all that is pitted against this community of the light. Almighty God, we decree for this divine victory now, by the power of our oneness, our love, our attunement, and all the ruby ray hosts of the Lord and the legions of Kartikeya. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the Divine Mother. Amen. Beloved mighty I Am Presence, O thou great central sun magnet, thee we adore. Beloved Alpha and Omega, beloved Surya and Cuzco, beloved Astrea and Purity, increase the light of the arc of the God Star and the oscillation of thy presence here and there. By the shaft of blue-white fire, by the meditation of the white fire, blue fire sun, O God, let us integrate this day with Sirius and the blue rose of Sirius whence we have come. I am the encircling now of the cause and core of every condition of entity and demon possession within this community, within this room, within the keepers of the flame of a cosmos. I call now for the sacred fire of the ruby ray and the Holy Spirit, for the purging and the binding of those elements of being that are not in the service of the light or the service of the Christ. O thou all-seeing eye of God and mighty X-ray, probe now the electronic belt, the four lower bodies, the subconscious and the unconscious. Let each one choose to surrender or not that which does inhabit his or her being, by volition, by allowance, by desire, by rebellion, by pride. O mighty I Am Presence, let the bowels of the earth and of these chelas and all chelas give up the ghosts of discarnates and demons and foul spirits. Let them be bound by the power of Astrea this day. Let them keep silent before the word of our beloved Lord Lanto, the world teachers, and the Lord Maitreya. I call for the binding of all aggressive mental suggestion and all out of alignment states in the four lower bodies. O soul of light, by God determination and God love, rise now to the center of the living Christ and be at peace in communion with the great teacher, the Comforter, the Holy Spirit, the Mahachohan. O Holy Christ, self of each one, take dominion. I call to the soul to bend the knee before the Holy Christ self, to receive her Lord and the inner Buddha, to receive the light and to be the servant of that light. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the Divine Mother, I call forth the sword of blue flame in the defense of the teacher and the pupil, the delivery of the teaching, and our right to be doing what we are doing, truly in the flame and the arms of the Buddha. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. On September 30th, 1989, Cuzco gave us a glimpse of the magnificent sea on Sirius, our home. I would like to tell you that we assume we have all come from the God Star. Perhaps in the very, very beginning we did. But there are some who wear the sign of Sirius, and it is the sign of the blue rose. And the reason that I know that not everyone bears that blue rose of Sirius is because following the dictation in which that was mentioned as the sign of those who come from Sirius, I was walking in the heart, And a young man said to me, "What do I have to do to get the rose of Sirius?" And so the master explained, either you have it or you don't right now. And if you are going to get it, it is a part of a path of initiation that has to do with the god Surya. So of course it is the focus of God's will and the great love of God's will. And now as we hear about the sea on Sirius, I'm asking you to visualize a blue rose over that sea as your focal point of being able to actually place yourself on Sirius as you hear this description. And thus as you hear the waves of the sea upon the shore of life and of earth, you are transported to that magnificent sea on the God Star, your home. There in Sirius, you recall that wave of light and of the sea that has come upon the shore in the most magnificent place that you could ever conceive. Thus your longing for home is very great, but you have chosen to sojourn here on this darkened star, for many that you have loved long are here. But your love for God is great, and to be the rescuers of those who are of God is your calling. On March 25th, 1989, Astrea and Purity established an arc between the God Star and Earth. This to me is a very exciting dispensation, and I have never lost the imminence of it. I always, when I make the call for it, sense that I am in the very midst of the dictation. And I see this arc very clearly, pulsating from this altar to the altar of the God Star. It is a great protection. It is a great shield. You remember that Abraham heard the voice of God, "I am thy shield." And the shield of God is light. And so in that shield, we know that we can move upon the earth and fulfill our reason for being, fulfill our most definite purpose, our very special purpose. Of all the dispensations you are hearing about, I would like you to take this one and make it your own. I do not give a call at the altar, whether for clearance or the work of the Brotherhood, without including this tremendous power that has been given to us. And as we all call upon it and make it our own, just like our tube of light, it will increase, it will strengthen. So it is the defender, the shield of the unfed flame on the altar and in our hearts. My beloved, Elohim Purity does speak to you now, beloved, as I am forever your starry mother, and my star in this moment does shoot to the star Sirius, as purity shall remain, and we shall establish this arcing of Sirius to earth. For God Surya has taken note of the effort of a band of chelas of the will of God in the 20th century as time is counted in the space of planet Earth. Circle and sword of Astrea, from the God Star Sirius, arc the light. I am that I am, Elohim, we are one. Now the oscillation of the light of the God Star Sirius to this point of contact does begin. And by these blue flame tapes so used, beloved, you have enabled this to be established. May the momentum continue as the final 2 tapes are released, and you are able to give your calls to Hercules, Amazonia, Surya, Cyclopea. Thus, in Moria's name and for his victory, we minister to the chelas of the will of God. Without the will of God, there is no purity, and the Divine Mother is cloaked in a star fire blue of sapphire hue. Later the same day, Surya told us why this ark had been established and explained El Moria's role as a son of Sirius in the training of those who are from the God Star. For I am Surya, and Cuzco with me, affirm the origin of the sons and daughters of God, at the point of the God Star Sirius. I affirm this focus of the great central sun as a point of origin for many who pass through Earth's schoolroom at this hour. Thus I come to reinforce the order of the blue rose of Sirius, and I come to remind all of your fealty to the order of the first ray, and thus I desire to enable you to understand how the beloved El Moria, son of Sirius, devotee of the will of God, is the Lord of the first ray for a reason, that reason being, beloved, that he does tarry in the earth for the training in the path of Chilaship of those who are descended from that God star and need the sharpening of the mind, the soul, the heart, and the desire body according to a path of devotion and service, according to then a true activity of the Gemini mind of God that is truly founded in that will, that holy will which is the grid of light of the divine plan. If you can visualize the complex geometric form of Earth itself, of a sphere, then understand that it is the congruency with that pattern that does raise you to the vibration of Sirius, that does become the open door to the purity of Sirius and the open door to the return to that home of light. This is our call to those then who are beginning to remember that you are pilgrims passing through, and that you have upon our star of light truly homes of great magnificence. You have left there, and you have left great palaces, and the golden age that is perpetual, and the evolution with life waves who are in constant contact with their teachers. Thus there is not the oppression and the state of mind of searching and looking as it is upon earth, and not knowing the way or being God taught in all of the various fields of human knowledge. These fields, beloved, are developed to their fullest extent on the God Star, and we desire to welcome you home once you have paid your respects and spent your sojourn on the planet Venus herself. Come then ye into alignment with the God Star. For this reason, beloved Astrea and Purity have established this ark between the God Star and the earth. I suggest that you take a moment when our star is visible to you to face that central sun and to give the mantra, I am Alpha and Omega. I am Alpha and Omega in the white fire core of being. Blessed ones, the mantra of the affirmation of ourselves where you are, as I am that I am, God, Surya, and Cuzco, in my heart and soul and mind, will enable us to anchor within you these currents. And believe me, beloved ones, there are currents from the stars. There are rays that do descend, and those rays are vital in the development of the spirituality of souls and of their chakras. Thus know, as you do, and as some are aware, that this is a binary star. And thus you see, in the revolving of the lesser sun around the greater, what is the devotion of Chila, the Chila Cuzco, to the Guru, Surya. May it also be with yourselves, for we desire to see the replica and the duplicate of this Guru-Chila relationship manifest upon earth. El Moria then is the key and the focus and the fulcrum, the very springboard to your re-attainment of the God mastery of the blue rose and the God mastery that enables you to become one with the God star. Begin then with all of his writings and dictations. Begin then with the teachings, as well as the lectures and sermons of the messenger Mark, who was his mouthpiece. Understand that Moria and his blue rose and his vibration of the God Star Sirius does absolutely permeate this activity. Anyone who should pass through these halls for any number of years and not reach the fullness of becoming a candidate for the ascension at Luxor and attaining that which is necessary to return to the God Star, I tell you, beloved, it is his own fault. For everything is here to reach and achieve that goal. And the final missing link to the entire path is the correct diet for each and every one of you. Let the full power then of Surya and Cuzco be made known unto you this day, for we hold the balance in the heart of the will of God, of the true Guru-Chela relationship, which you may entertain with beloved El Moria, and which you may intensify, if you desire to do so, through the heart of the embodied and ascended messengers. Blessed ones, there is a path, and it can be fully realized and attained to here. You need not be concerned, beloved ones, for the tests you receive are directly the wavelength of the God Star. We must have full warriors of the Spirit. We must have adepts out of this experiment on planet Earth. You volunteered, beloved hearts, and therefore we hold you to your promise and your vow. You came to demonstrate this path. Now we demand that you outdo every other path, every other Chela, every other form of worship or discipleship, not because you are competitive, but because you have the highest truth, because you know you have a mighty I Am presence, and because your lives must be a testimony that this path does work, and not a testimony of those who will tolerate entities of gluttony, sugar, anger, condemnation, resentment, and all the rest within their force fields. These things cling to that rotting food within the body, that rotting substance, and all of the drugs and chemicals that they have pumped into this generation. It is an outrage, beloved, and you are our beloved, and we desire to see you empty that we might fill you with light. Therefore, do your part, and you will see that far beyond those who give mere physical testimony of health improvements, you will give the testimony of the victory of the light and the victory of the ascension. I would like to tell you about the meditation that Sanat Kumara outlines. It's in his December 2nd, 1979 Pearl of Wisdom, which is in the hardbound book. It's a 10-minute meditation on the white fire sun of your I Am presence and the blue fire sun of Sirius. It's on page 338 to 41. You can study it and you can do it on your own. It's a kind of a thing that you like to do when you're hiking in the mountains, or one of those things that you can add to your ashram rituals. Now we will take Phylos, page 129. When, according to request, I arrived at the Agaco Palace on the next morning, I proceeded directly to the private office there occupied by Prince Menax, expecting to find my father alone. But in this I was disappointed, as Rai Wallen was there with him. The two were in conversation when I entered and did not cease, evidently not regarding me as an intruder. At last I heard the Rai ask, "Should we not now go to the Inca Lithlon? If it please thee, and thou, Zailm, accompany us." A palace car was summoned by the Rai and came rolling along into our presence, without any person to operate it. Came in at the door of the office, which opened to allow its passage, precisely as if some court page had opened it. It wheeled into the room and came to a stop in front of us. All this was done exactly as if under a guiding hand, but no visible hand was there. This was the first time I had ever seen any exhibition of occult power on the part of Wallen. Indeed, I never saw many examples of his power, notwithstanding his high adeptship. Like all true adepts, he was exceedingly chary of such object lessons. disliking to show his knowledge before those not possessed of sufficient common sense to know that any acts of the sort were but examples of the control of nature through an understanding of higher laws than the ordinary mind perceives in its natural surroundings. But I was not one who saw anything miraculous in the occult. If I understand not the process, I did understand that it was but the operation of some unfamiliar law. Hence Wallen was not adverse to allowing me to witness his power at times. I would like to say that the Wallen allowing him to witness the exercise of power shows with what regard he regarded Zailm, because it is the law of the Brotherhood that a true adept will never allow his powers to be seen, perhaps with the exception of a single chela, or when it is told to that adept by his guru that he should use it for some beneficial purpose. So you will find that those who like to demonstrate their siddhis or powers for show, for demonstration, for attracting acclaim and building a personality cult, they will do so. But you will know that when they are doing so, that they are not under the Great White Brotherhood. We had a swami come to La Tourelle in Colorado Springs who could demonstrate the stopping of his heartbeat and various other feats such as the swallowing of mercury. And so he was very capable of black magic and did cause a couple of apples growing on our tree in the springtime to somehow be conditioned by, or to be radiated by, or to carry the vibration of his intended domination over myself. So he brought these apples in, and with a great feigned devotional and loving look to me, presented me these apples. And I thanked him very much, and I put them down on the dining room table. And I had to quickly go to the kitchen because I was cooking the food for a group of people. This was in the middle of the conference. I was cooking food in the kitchen. It was on the break. We have done everything, believe me, as messengers. And so I was very busy getting this food ready, and it took some time. And so when I came to serve it in this dining room that seated about 8 or 10 people, I arrived there, and the swami had actually been helping me cook. So we arrived there, and 2 students that were attending the conference were eating these apples. And I thought nothing of it, but he was furious. If you ever saw the anger of a black magician, it was his anger. Because what happened at that point is from the moment they ate these apples, these 2 individuals became his slaves. And we didn't realize that this had happened, but when they went back to their hometown, which happened to be where he was also, they left the Ascended Master's path and teaching and began following him around like puppy dogs. And so some very strange things happened through this man, such as the baby grand piano in one of their homes falling on the foot of one of their wives and breaking her foot. This is supposedly under the Swami's protection. So this individual is definitely one of the black arts. He's functioning today. He's written a book in imitation of Yogananda's book about the story of his life and all of the great adepts he knew in India. But what he does actually is he seduces the women in his organization, supposedly in the context of yoga. But what he accomplishes in this is the enslavement of people to his personality. I have received the casualties who've been through his movement, who have come here and asked to be cut free from him. So I can assure you, no matter what anyone will ever tell you, that a true adept will not do this. And his motive in doing it was to take chelas from the Brotherhood, from the Ascended Masters. And those who will worship phenomena and the personality and be beguiled by the energy which can be misused in the chakras to be extremely magnetic should realize that that is the kind of teacher they wind up with. It's like the blind followers of the blind. After some time, El Morya actually dictated a letter through Mark in rebuke of this man. But what we must understand is that whatever level of teacher the pupil is ready for or is vulnerable to, the pupil will receive. So the axiom that we quote is that when the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear. The question is, what is the level of readiness, and who is the teacher that will appear? So the reason I read this to you today is so that you would be absolutely certain to understand that there is such an honor and respect for the power of God in the true adept that he will never use it for a demonstration, because it is costing the universe something. It costs the universe and the master something to appear to you. So it is definitely the prostituting of the sacred fire of the Divine Mother to have these individuals do these things. The other casualties we have received in this organization from Eastern teachers is those who have taught them or attempted to teach them the yoga of raising the sacred fire, and doing so by having members of the opposite sex face one another, meditate on one another, and stimulate the raising of that energy. People get very disturbed when that energy rises prematurely. This particular swami takes people in almost at the very earliest stages and into these tantric practices. And so what will happen is it will get to the level of the electronic belt at the solar plexus, activate the records of the subconscious and the unconscious over which the individual has no power, can cause extremes of many kinds: insanity, anger, depression, and an inability to turn it off. So that is why when we do the Bija mantras, we say that, first of all, Saint Germain is our sponsor, that he requires that we give Michael's and the Violet Flame the heart, head, and hand decrees before giving those Bija mantras, which is what I tell my audiences when I'm lecturing publicly. So no true teacher is going to line you up in the practice of tantric yoga in this manner. And the Ascended Masters explain that the raising of the sacred fire is by love and by the violet flame, and when the violet flame presses down upon your aura and force field, like a barometer, at a certain pressure, that light begins to rise, and it is done under the supervision of your Holy Christ Self, your I Am Presence, and the Ascended Masters who sponsor us in this. And their teaching is that when you are on a path of holiness and you have certain levels of transmutation and the fervor of love for God, this raising of the Kundalini will happen naturally. And it will come so gradually that you can have this Kundalini raised and the activation of it at the base of the brain, at the third eye, at the crown chakra. It can be so gradual and so gentle that you become accustomed to walking in this raised sacred fire as a normal part of being. And you find that as you make progress on the path and pass your tests and so forth and keep on with the decree work, even though it seems, as many people think, that they're not making any progress, you are making progress, and it is the integration of the whole man with the whole manifestation of God. It comes so gradually that you may not even realize that you are walking more in your etheric body than you are in the emotional, which is necessary, and anchoring in the physical and being very practical. Now, the idea of being etheric does not mean being impractical and otherworldly. The etheric body is your fire body, and you walk in that body when you are on the path of the ascension prior to your ascension, and you are at the stage of your most effective performance in life. So the term ethereal should not be confused with etheric. And you should understand, as Moria recently counseled an individual who wanted to know where her twin flame was. He said she is not going to be told where her twin flame is because that is her test. And she should be told that if she's going to make her ascension, she cannot live in her emotional body. She's going to have to learn to live in her etheric body, because this person is very emotional about the subject and tends to gravitate to that level concerning such subjects. So I would like to point out these things to you, that this is a true son of the solitude, Rai Wallen. And if you would like to know where the pronunciation of his name is, it's at the beginning of the book in the pronunciation page. The car conveyed us to the Valk's landing outside, where we found a Valks of small size, into which Rai Wallen courteously assisted first Menax, then myself, and himself entered last. Here was a spectacle worthy of note. The ruler of a mighty nation, without the display of a single attendant, not more deferential to rank than to those of inferior station. True, as a Zayo in Kali, Wallen had command over mechanical service, which was more regal far than a retinue of menials could be. Like father, like son, Wallen, who was as a father to his people, was copied by them in his demeanor. They too were simple in habits, courteous in manner, and though in many cases wealthy and luxurious in their habits in life, were entirely unostentatious as their rise set them example. The great temple of Inkle was distant several miles, but a few minutes sufficed to bring us to its huge structure. Outwardly, the Inkalithlan was shaped like the Egyptian pyramid of Cheops, not quite so high, but covering an area of twice as great extent. No windows pierced its sides, and sunlight or that of day never entered its interior. Besides a number of small apartments, the building contained one vast hall, where was space for several thousand worshippers. The Poseid habit of copying nature was followed in this sanctuary with extraordinary faithfulness. Instead of straight walls or alcoves or the ordinary arrangement of interiors, the enormous auditorium was in faithful semblance of a cave of stalactites and stalagmites. In placing all this calcite, utility was consulted with regard to the stalagmites, so that too much floor space should not be occupied by them. But the stalactites, being pendant from the marble ceiling, had been placed as thickly as space allowed, and sparkled like stars in the light from the incandescent lamps swung midway between them and the floor below. From the latter point of view, these lamps were concealed by broad concave shades, so that their glow was wholly visible from beneath, but shining upwards was reflected from myriads of sparkling white needles, filling the temple with a steady and soft but powerful light that seemed to emanate from no special point, but from the air itself, a light well adapted to religious meditation. You can be certain that this pyramid is designed for one purpose. What is the one purpose? To house the unfed flame. And so its very force field and angles are there so that the maximum benefit can be gained from the Maxin light and its maximum protection. You can imagine how these angles should multiply that light. Now, it doesn't seem as though, from the descriptions in the book, that this flame is burning at the 2/3 level. But perhaps it is. I do not believe that we are told. But we have been told that there is a point 2/3 from the base of the pyramid where the resurrection flame is, and this is the explanation that was given to us many years ago when it was found that you could preserve meat at that level of the pyramid or sharpen razor blades and various numbers of things that Soviet psychics were doing. So that was the explanation, just as the threefold flame of the heart is about at the 2/3 level of the body. You remember we were in the section on the adoption of Zailm when we were in the conference, and I read the part of it which is on the unfed flame. We left the Valks and entered the unimposing but ample portal and proceeded across the hall to the holy seat in the back of the sanctuary. Within it we found Manin, the Inkalits, or high priest, a man of wondrous attainments of knowledge, second to none in fact. To him we all made courteous obeisance And then Prince Menax said, Most holy Incalits, thou knowest in thy great wisdom upon what errand thy sons have come before thee. Wilt thou fulfill our prayer by granting us thy blessing? The Incalits arose and bade us to follow him into the triangle of the Maxin, or divine light, in front of the holy seat. Deferring the relation of our subsequent action, I will describe this especially sacred part of the temple. It was a raised triangular platform of red granite, several inches higher than the floor of the auditorium, 36 feet between its points. In the very center of it was a large block of crystal quartz, upon the perfect cube of which rose the Maxin. This seemed a flame in shape like a giant spearhead, and it cast a light of intense power over all things around. Yet one could look at its steady, unwavering white glow without desiring shade for the eyes, even though these were not strong. Over 3 times the height of a tall man it stood, a mysterious manifestation of Inco, which is their name for God, as all spectators believed. In reality, it was an occult odic light, and had stood in that one spot for centuries. It had witnessed the grander development of Poseid and its capital city, and had seen the original temple of Inco, a small architectural structure unworthy of a great people, torn down, and the present Incalithlon built around it. It made no heat, did not even warm the quartz pedestal, yet for any living being to touch it was fatal in the instant of the rash act. No oil, no fuel, no electric currents fed it. No man tended it. Its history was peculiar and cannot fail to interest thee, my friends. Many hundred years previously there had been for 434 days a ruler over the Poseidi who possessed wonderful knowledge. I would like to point out that 434 days, calculated in months of 31 days each, is exactly a 14-month cycle. This wisdom was like that of Ernan of Suern, who was the emperor of what is now Hindustan. No one knew whence he came, and not a few were disposed to question his statement, while all were in doubt as to whether his meaning was figurative or literal when he said, I am from Inkle. Lo, I am a child of the sun, and am come to reform the religion and life of this people. Behold, Inkle is the Father, and I am the Son, and he is in me, and I am in him. He was asked to prove this claim, whereupon he laid his hand upon a man born blind, and the man received his sight, and saw with the doubters that his deliverer stooped to the pavement of the triangular platform, and with his finger drew a square 5.5 feet either way. Then he stepped outside of the lines indicated, and at once the great block of quartz appeared a perfect cube in the place. Standing by its side, he placed his finger upon the rock and blew thereon with his breath. As he withdrew the finger, the Maxin, or fire of Inkle, sprang up, and thus had cube and unfed fire remained during all the centuries since. It is needless to say the proof was satisfactory, and thereafter the mysterious stranger revised the laws and provided then the code which had ever since governed the land. He had said that whosoever should add to or take from his laws, that person should not come into the kingdom of Inkle until I am come on earth for the final judgment. No one had ever desired to disobey, it would seem, or at least no change had ever been made. The laws which this Rai had given were written by him with his finger upon the Maxin stone, and no work of sculptor's chisel were better done. They were also written upon a book of parchment leaves, and this he placed under the unfed light itself, which thereafter sprang from the surface of the book. This had remained ever since, unharmed, unscorched. The wonderful writer had placed it there in sight of all the people who could enter the new temple built in place of the old one. As he did so, he said, "Hearken unto me, this is my law. Behold it also written on the Maxin stone. No man shall remove it, lest he die. Yet after centuries have flown, behold, the book shall disappear in sight of a multitude, and no man shall know its place. Then shall the unfed light go out, and no man be able to rekindle it. And when these things have come to pass, lo, the day is not far off when the land shall be no more. It shall perish because of its iniquity, and the waters of Atol shall roll above it. I have spoken." Once in the history of Poseid, a Rai had come to doubt whether a man would surely die if he tried to withdraw the book of the unfed light. He conceived the idea that as the Maxin sprang from the top of the book alone, and not from its sides, that removal might be possible. So therefore he forced a malefactor to attempt the deed, fearing after all to try it himself, although in the tyrannous policy which he followed, he cared not whether the man died or not. That was a day of growing darkness and wickedness, when men had somewhat forgotten the great Rai, son of Inkel. The unhappy wretch was made to grasp the book and withdraw it if he could. He found it impossible to move it, but yet was not destroyed by the Maxin. Grown bolder and urged by the Rai, he tried harder. He pulled, and then his grasp gave way, and one hand passed through the Maxin. The member was instantly destroyed, cut off, gone, while the monarch, standing many feet distant, fearful of approaching near, was stricken in that same instant by an outleaping flash of the Maxin, and no one ever saw him more. That one example was sufficient. The error of their ways suddenly became very apparent to the evildoers, and administration of the laws was again in accord with their spirit as with their letter. The day of the dismal prophecy had been looked for as the decades passed into centuries, but its time was not yet come, and though many alarmists set days when it would surely come, it came not, and the unfed light continued. The story goes on to recount that cremation is performed in this hall, and the body is consecrated, and it is lifted into the Maxin flame, wherein it disappears. Cremation was the order of the day on Atlantis. Now I would like to give you what to me is such an astounding revelation about Jesus and about the Maxin light. I wrote in the introduction to the 1984 Pearls of Wisdom that up until some 12,000 years ago, Jesus had had previous incarnations on the continents of Lemuria and Atlantis, and that in one embodiment he ruled Atlantis during an age of great enlightenment, when more than 50% of the population were fully clothed in their Christhood. El Morya has stated during the teaching of this course that Jesus was an emperor on Atlantis about 23,000 years before the story of Zailm that is told in A Dweller on Two Planets. Zailm's story took place about 13,000 years ago. The astounding revelation of El Morya is that Jesus came for those 400 some days as this one who established the Maxin light. He established this on the altar in the temple, set forth the book of the law that would guide Atlantis in all days to come until her decline. And this was done because the cosmic council said the people must receive this as the true intercession of the Son of God. They must see it as a miracle, and they must see this one who has come from God come into their midst for a single purpose and leave again. In this way, him not taking on human form, but appearing and disappearing, the greatest confidence would be in the law and in the light, the greatest reverence, and this would become part of their race memory, part of their scriptures handed down, the story of whence their civilization had descended. All of this has taken place in the period of the 25,800 year period that we are now concluding. So I would like to point out that when Jesus says in the book of Revelation, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last, this is more than an affirmation that he is the manifestation of the Father, Mother, God. Jesus is telling us that he was present in the beginning of these 12 cycles and in the ending of these 12 cycles, and furthermore that he has come every 2,000 years in some form to remind us of our path of personal Christhood. This great devotion of Jesus Christ to us, his office as Lord and Savior, did not begin 2,000 years ago. It began, if it did begin then, 25,800 years ago, and perhaps longer before. In this context, we come to appreciate the magnitude of Jesus' power, and we come to understand himself as the Buddha, as El Morya revealed that he and Kuthumi had attained to the office of the Buddha. Jesus came to remind us of our assignment in each 2,150-year cycle, to realize our Christhood under each of the 12 signs of the zodiac. What is even more amazing was that this teaching came to me this week without any recollection whatsoever of what Jesus and Magda explained on December 7th, 1984. Quote, during past ages, after your leaving off from the place of perfection, each 2,000 years, we have come with a profound message and sacrifice of our very life to reach out to your twin flames, to woo you back to the great temples of the Brotherhood and to the school of Maitreya. Speaking of the Maxin light, beloved Lanto said through Mark on October 30th, 1966, in cooperation with the God and Goddess Meru, Lord Lanto was granted the dispensation by the karmic board for a mighty transcendent golden flame of illumination to pulsate 300 feet into the atmosphere over the colleges, universities, divinity, and theological schools of America and the world, whose students and faculty are receptive to knowledge from higher spheres. During this dictation, he refers to the Maxin light that was on Atlantis. We will play the audio excerpt of it at this moment.
Therefore, I am asking the Lords of Karma for a special grant this night to spread abroad holy illumination's flame in cooperation with the God and Goddess Meru. I am asking that there be anchored in every university in this land that is receptive to knowledge, especially to knowledge revealed from the higher octaves, a mighty transcendent golden flame of illumination which shall pulsate 300 feet into the atmosphere above each university, and shall day after day, hour after hour, radiate ascended master light into the force field of the students who are attending these universities. I am asking that that force field be created this night and this day, this hour, by God's own light and power of illumination, sustained then for all time to come as foci of the sacred fire. I am asking that a fixation be made of these flames, that as the great light blazed forth of old in Atlantis, in the Incalithalon, so the great Maxim light will now blaze forth as the maximum light of cosmic knowledge within the campuses and force fields of the universities of the world, and also within the divinity and theological schools of the world, to create a theological concept based upon divine practicality.
The book concludes the word Maxin with an N, and the dictations conclude the word with an M. I cannot explain that to you, but I'm pointing it out. On July 3rd, 1987, Archangel Michael delivered a message from Maximus, great being of light, about the Maxim light. Beloved ones of light, Maximus does step forward, and he does hold the balance for the coming of Alpha in a mighty star of light over this heart of the inner retreat. And he does communicate and beam to me now that you may apply to him for the Maxim light. But you must understand the path of chelaship and receive the interior correction of the Christ mind, and receive all emissaries of God, of the heavenly hosts and of the messengers beneath, that you might quickly respond and not resist the will of God that is in the heart of the Maxim light. I think then that if the will of God is in the heart of the Maxim light, and we are seeking that light, we begin to see the purpose of El Moria's ashram and his rituals, that as we approach the will of God through that means and through his teaching, we are also approaching the Maxim light. The flame of the Ark of the Covenant that was with the children of Israel, out of which the voice of God spoke to Moses, that flame was withdrawn. But on the etheric level, upon our altar, that flame burns, and it is to the flame of the Ark of the Covenant as the unfed flame that we call. I believe that its presence at the etheric level is the prophecy of the return once again in the time of a future golden age of the physical, tangible Maxin light that was once there. In the final chapters of this book, the decadence of the last days of Atlantis is explained, and the scene when the Maxin light went out is given. It is a horrible scene where the priests tending the flame actually turn to murder in its presence. And it is permanently withdrawn, and some decades or centuries thereafter came the sinking of Atlantis, which tells us truly with such finality that in order to sustain, in order to have a golden age civilization, there must be a living flame in the center. And when it is kept and its laws are obeyed and the people live in righteousness with their God, who knows how long a golden age may last. It also tells us that when, as it is written by Jesus, as it is spoken by him in the New Testament, when the abomination of desolation stands in the holy place where it ought not, then you shall see the signs of the end of the age. So the abomination of desolation is the abomination against that light which causes the light to be withdrawn from the holy place. So, beloved ones, I think in the context of your journey through Atlantis and Lemuria, you begin to realize what Phylos says, that we are Atlantis come again in America. And we come to understand what is the meaning of the word, keeper of the flame. We have come to keep the flame of life, that we might be worthy to keep the flame of the Maxin light, which is the flame of life. God has sent us under Saint Germain to be the precursors of an age when that flame may be returned and civilization may return to the levels it once was. Now we're going to page 134. About 1/3 up, we'll continue reading. According to the law, bodies of all souls which had passed into Navazamin were cremated. And of course, that is the country of departed souls. This even included some animals. Those dying at a distance from Kaiful were incinerated in some one of the multitude of Navamaksa furnaces specially for dead bodies, which the government provided all through the provinces. And if the incinerated body was that of a human being, the ashes were taken to Kaiful and cast into the Maxin as a ceremonial act. Those of the departed from Kaiful were taken as they lay in death to the Incalithlan, and being raised to the top of the cube, were let fall face forward into the unfed light. In either case, whether as incinerated ashes or unaltered forms, the result was the same. That is, while there was no flaming, no smoke, no tremor of the Maxin, nevertheless the instantaneous disappearance of the object occurred at the second of contact with the marvelous unfed fire. Hence it had been sung by poets as the gateway to the country which each soul must discover for itself. To die without in some manner passing into the Maxin, either in corpus persona or by the ashes from prior incineration, was thought to be the most frightful calamity by the greater number of the people. It might appear that people of such scientific erudition would not be so seemingly childish in religious conceptions as this. As a verity, it was not childishness. Instead, it was an insistence upon such entire destruction of the earthly casket of the soul as to render certain the freedom of the real person from all earthly restraint in entering into Navazamin. Not that many people understood the esoteric significance of the rite. No, they but understood so much of the real meaning as the Inkali had given them through comparing the earth-leaving soul to the seed which sprouting leaves behind it every fragment of the shell. Since cremation is such an important teaching of the Ascended Masters, I would like to give you the steps for cremation, and I would like to tell you it's very important that everyone here make out a will. You can consult our attorney, Richard Kaler. You can consult Timothy Connor, who's not an attorney but a legal advisor. We have forms which deal with the provision for cremation in your will. It's probably one of the most important parts of your will, if not the most important, but the disposition of your effects can save many a quarrel when you are not here. I was thinking about this cremation provision in the will and how many people I have seen who've been keepers of the flame whose families have insisted upon burying the body regardless of the will. And I was thinking about this, and you can think about it yourself, but I thought to myself it would be a good idea if you have relatives that are Orthodox anything, who do not believe in cremation, that perhaps you put the stipulation in addition to the instructions for cremation, that if anyone should dispute the cremation part of the will, they would be automatically excluded from the rest of the will, and whatever you might be leaving to them. I think this is a very serious matter, just as the people of Atlantis thought it was a serious matter. We just had a young woman who passed on of a brain tumor. She was very young, like in her 30s, and her parents were Orthodox Jews, and they insisted upon burying her. And the reason that it is so important is that the light must be released from the body, and so long as there is light in the body, it binds the soul to the earth. Whereas if the light through cremation is returned to the etheric plane of the individual, then that individual has no reason to be earthbound and to be held back by the body. One of the things we do on the path when we first learn about this is go through a period of making calls whereby any bodies that we have ever worn, wherever they may have been buried in the earth, should have the light withdrawn from them and be demagnetized, and let the light return to our I Am presence. I read in the newspaper, just when I found the teachings, when I found Mark Prophet in Boston, that they had found in a cave somewhere, I believe in the Netherlands, the body of a young woman that was very ancient and very old. And it had completely turned to dust, but it was in perfect form. It had never been disturbed. And I think that the moment someone went into the cave or the moment someone touched it, the entire body simply collapsed into a heap of dust. I recognized that that was one of my bodies from the past, and that that body had been preserved unto the moment when I would connect with a path in this life, at which time, for whatever reason it had been preserved, it would no longer remain. It was an amazing experience for me, but I assure you I have done the work on all such bodies, mummies, etc., and I suggest you do the same. Claim that energy and call in your Astreas. If in a period of 9 days of Astreas you make that call as one of the calls you make during your Astreas, you may be able to complete the entire task. I say may because it depends on the devotion of your heart as you make the call and your ability to release so many of your past selves into the light. So if you have a loved one who would pass on, and if they have not made any stipulation as to the form of care of the body or the burial, then you should proceed with the following steps, and this wording would also be in your will. Now, as in the case of my parents, I had many years to educate them as to the merits of cremation, and by the time I got finished telling them about it, they decided that was the best thing in the world, and so I didn't have any problem in that respect. So here are the instructions. Immediately upon death, place the body on ice for 2 days and 2 nights. Most funeral parlors will obey this request, and you can tell them they can do it with dry ice. If this is not possible, the body may be refrigerated. The body should not be embalmed or tampered with in any way, the reason being that the light is in the blood. So when the blood goes down the drain into the sewer of the mortuary and you are injected with embalming fluid, your body is, that will preserve you for God knows how many centuries. But the light going into the drain is going into the earth and it is not liberated. And so one situation of being as you were is superseded by a worse situation entirely. So on the 3rd day, usually the mortuary will cooperate and take the body to the crematorium if they do not have one. And most crematoriums have a place where you can have a service, just as mortuaries do. And so you are there, and you may deal with the body either there or in the mortuary when it is first placed there. But sometime during these 2 days before the cremation, you should go with a loved one, or a minister of our church can do this, and one stands at the head and one stands at the foot of the body. One takes hold of the feet, one can place his hands on the shoulders. And you make the call for the withdrawal of all light from the body and the withdrawal of the soul and the substance of the soul from the body, especially the emotional body. The real reason for the 2 days and the 2 nights is because people are emotionally tied to the body. They do not always leave it when it passes on. They are attached to it. Relatives are attached to it. And so there is a process of the separating out of the soul from the body that should take place. If the body is cremated too soon, then there may be some sensation to the soul of the cremation, which we do not want the soul to be a part of that cremation. So on the 3rd day is the 3rd day when Jesus is resurrected. So this is a commemoration of the body being in the tomb and then being resurrected. The cremation may take place either during or following the memorial service. So keepers of the flame usually will gather at the place of cremation and make calls for the soul to be taken to octaves of light and be cut free, and continue to make the calls for the light to be withdrawn from the body. Now we'd like to read you Sanat Kumara's teaching on the subject of cremation. It was given in his September 16th, 1979 Pearl of Wisdom. That's in the bound volume of the 79 Pearls. The law is given by my son of Luxor, Serapis Bey, for the cremation of the physical vehicle. For did he, Jesus, not say that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God? I suppose you all know that the reason that people are buried is that they expect them to rise up on the day of the resurrection, and Jesus to come along and raise up all these bodies, and that is their concept of the resurrection. Christians firmly believe this, and therefore they believe that cremation is a satanic ritual and destroys the possibility of your resurrection. And this is why they go to so much botheration to have the person perfectly dressed in the most beautiful coffin, the most beautiful dress, and everything that they would want to be wearing when they would meet Jesus. And loved ones are buried together so that they can be resurrected together, and so then you have family plots and family graveyards, and this never ends. So this is a tremendous setback to individuals, and of course a very great disappointment to them when they get to the other side and those of light are taken to higher octaves, and they see the folly of many things, not only the doctrine, but of having a body now that they are going to have to transmute, and which does create a continual pull on them. This information comes from the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, which states, quote, "In ancient times, cremation was generally practiced in all countries with the exception of Egypt, China, Palestine, and Persia. The ancient world appears to have witnessed many exceptions and wide deviations in the question of burial or cremation. The abundance or scarcity of fuel for cremation purposes, not the belief in resurrection or any other religious reasons, probably was of decisive importance in determining the attitude toward burial on the one hand or toward cremation on the other." I would take that statement with a grain of salt. In the medieval period, opposition to cremation was in large measure based on the firm belief in the resurrection of the dead. Cremation naturally is a denial of resurrection. That statement, cremation naturally is a denial of resurrection, is the mindset of the author who is writing for this encyclopedia. Obviously, we do not believe that cremation is a denial of resurrection. What he should have written is, cremation is a denial of the resurrection of the physical body. But we do not believe in the resurrection of the physical body, but of the soul in the spiritual body. However, we do believe that you can receive the initiation of the resurrection in your lifetime without having to go through the process called death. There are initiates who walk this earth who are in the resurrected state, and they have passed through that initiation of the resurrection. It is a pre-ascension initiation. Christians call going to heaven the resurrection, but we call going to heaven the ascension, and we see the ascension as a step far beyond the resurrection. Advocates of cremation cite the passage from Midrash Vayosha, which relates the request made by Isaac of his father Abraham that he bring his ashes to his mother Sarah. I think that you should recognize that Abraham was very close to the traditions of Atlantis, and the fact that cremation was involved in the time of Abraham shows that it was a carryover practice from Atlantis, and that was the original tradition. Of course, I believe that we should be following Abraham as opposed to any other customs that have arisen since. Among Reform or liberal Jews, cremation is a matter of individual choice, and it is being practiced instead of burial with increasing frequency. This is continuing the quote from the encyclopedia. These Jews no longer accept the doctrine of the resurrection of the body, instead upholding the doctrine of the immortality of the soul. Hence, the old objection to destroying the body by cremation has no validity for them. Conservative and Orthodox Jews object to cremation on the ground that it is a relic of an ancient pagan custom, that burial was practiced in Judaism since the very early period and is regarded as a biblical law which has been sanctified by time and observance, and that it is disrespectful to the dead to burn their bodies, since the human body must be regarded as sacred even after death. And as you know, what we believe is that the light is sacred, and that the body, no longer a suitable vessel for the light, should be demagnetized of the light taken up, and the empty shell allowed to be passed into the flame, which to me is the most respectful thing to do with the body, because when it is placed in the ground, it is left to worms, to whatever is going to be the decay process. When you think about it, the fire is always holy and has been worshipped in every religion known to man. And what could be a safer place to place the body than into the fire itself? It's a matter of tradition and viewpoint. But anyway, you will know then that these are the views, at least that are in the encyclopedia. So Sanat Kumara says, the morbidity surrounding the people's consciousness of death and dying is also the demon that must be cast out. For the embalming and the burying of the body is the prolongation of the death entity itself. For the body is composed of light, and the light in the nucleus of every atom and molecule and cell must be demagnetized from the earthy, and the dust must be allowed to return to dust, even as the light that preserved its matrix is allowed to spiral to the great central sun, as it is released from its encasement in form by the fire element. To this end, the fiery salamanders perform their priestly duties of returning the noble work of Elohim, the body of male and female, to the great central sun for repolarization. Let cremation be the liberation of my people from morbidity and attachment to the form. For nevermore will that form be reborn, but the soul, it shall be clothed upon with white raiment, with the righteousness of the saints. It is the idolatry of the self that perpetuates the cult of the tombstone and enriches the morticians and fills the coffers and the coffins of the mausoleum operators, who capitalize on the false belief of the masses that immortality is to be found in the ground. There was a funny quip in one of this week's news magazines. You may have spotted it, but it was from a woman who designs dresses for corpses. And her comment that was the quotable quote was that many times families come in and look at these dresses and say, "Oh, that looks just like Mom." So they find the dress that perfectly fits their mother, and the reasons for which I've already stated. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Let the sea, the earth, be exorcised of death, the death entity, and the bodies in whom there is no life. For the breath of life hath gone out of them, never to return. And those empty houses are invaded by the foul spirits of death, who, as vultures, feed upon the light, yet imprisoned in the form. This is God's light and God's energy. It has always been to me a great burden to see the amount of land that is dedicated to graveyards, especially near big cities, where that land could be put to use of those who are the living. But the greatest burden of all is that ultimately, in the disintegration process, you have groundwater, and you have diseases and plagues that go into it, and who knows how far is the contamination of the water we drink by the thousands and thousands of people that are buried in the earth. So to even spare the earth the burden of disease is another reason for cremation. Let the elementals of fire, air, water, and earth recycle this energy back home to God, and see how the planetary body, Blessed Virgo herself, will radiate more light and more light and more light. Citizens of earth, we deplore the death consciousness on which you have seemed to thrive, after the fashion of the black magicians who would destroy you alive, destroy your souls in hell, while leaving your bodies to walk the streets of physical cities and astral planes. Saints of God, this is a serious matter, for the whole matter vehicle of this evolution must be cleared, and the ancient practices of the Egyptian cult of the dead must give way to the culture of life that leads to the ascension. Therefore, go forth and teach the people to place the body on ice, dry or otherwise, 2 days and 2 nights. And on the 3rd day, the commemoration of the resurrection is the invocation of the resurrection flame. Whether on funeral pyre or in a modern crematorium, let the physical fire pass through the body that is untouched, for both flesh and blood must be intact, and embalming is forbidden by the Brotherhood of Luxor. This method is safe and sane and healthy for all, and allows the soul the freedom from all earthly ties, as the 4 lower vehicles are demagnetized simultaneously by the physical fire and the spiritual fire, and the soul, as the winged symbol of the Ka, takes flight with a flying eagle to pursue the initiations of the Mother in the retreats of the Great White Brotherhood. In this way, the demons have no prey, and the vultures no flesh and blood. And the astral sheath itself, consumed by the physical spiritual fire, may not roam the earth, a ghost of the former self. The astral hordes that would devour the coils of light are themselves put to flight, for the soul has clean escaped the mortal round, and is heard singing, heaven bound. I would like to play you an excerpt of a dictation by Cyclopea, in which he spoke of the ritual of cremation. This is October 11th, 73.
The ritual of cremation is a sacred ritual of those who worship the sun, who bear the sun. To return that which is no longer useful to the soul into the flame is a great protection which cannot be overestimated. It is necessary that your energies, the energies of your body temples which have become so filled with light, so saturated with light by your devotion, be sealed in fire, for fire is the baptism of the Holy Ghost and the protection of the Holy Ghost. Do you understand that the ritual of the embalming and the burying of the remains comes from the ancient custom in the Book of the Dead? The preservation of the form for the next life is absolutely unnecessary, and I declare it unto you, that in the day of the resurrection, when Christ shall summon the elect to rise from the earth, they shall arise in new garments, new light bodies, and they shall be one with him in the great rapture of the Lord. I tell you then, with a stern warning, that if you allow the remains of your habitation to go into the earth unguarded, there to rot and decay, you will find that the ghosts of Christmas past will arise to steal that light, to absorb it, to perpetuate their existence, and thus, long after you have exited this world and this temple, you will find forces of darkness that harbor near the mausoleums and the cemeteries of the world, will be living off of the light which you garnered in this house during the period of contemplation, service, and dedication to the Most High God. Sons and daughters of flame, you have a responsibility to return to the flame every erg of energy and all substance which has served its usefulness, its purpose upon earth. Be no longer fooled by the cult of the dead. There is no death. Why then preserve a record of death, when these records must be undone, line upon line, each one, till every jot and tittle of the law be fulfilled.
On March 31st, 1985, Zarathustra gave his teaching on cremation.
Beloved hearts, there is much superstition concerning the passing of loved ones on this planet, and many cling to them, and therefore the progression of earthly and spiritual cycles does not accelerate as it should in the Aquarian age. I remind you as a spokesman of the sacred fire, and as God the consuming fire who revealed himself to Moses, that cremation is the lawful means of disposing of the remains of the life stream who has passed from this octave, thereby accelerating and hastening the entire consciousness that exists within the body cells to return to that one's Christ self and I am presence for purification. Blessed hearts, it is very difficult for those whose bodies are interred to afterwards perform the necessary rituals at inner levels to liberate their light and consciousness from that earth focus. It is important that there come in the revolution in higher consciousness a true understanding of the sacred fire as the nexus of the figure eight through which all must pass. Thus the trial by fire comes in the physical, the mental, the emotional, the etheric bodies, and all must pass through that sacred fire. That which is placed in the flame then is liberated to return to the great central sun of the I am presence, to be recharged and sent forth for the new birth of that soul. The consuming of the physical body has its counter effect upon the astral body that is demagnetized even by the physical fire. Thus it hastens the disintegration of the astral sheath that may wander about as a discarnate, disconnected and yet affecting others with a heavy sense of oppression and emotion. This is especially true in the case of suicide, beloved ones, because the one who has committed suicide, being close to earth and earthbound, may influence other members of the family and relatives to also commit suicide.
This teaching, in addition to what it adds to cremation, reminds us that if someone passes on whom we know of, or a public figure, who is a servant not of light, but a servant of corruption, a servant of the darkness, that individual may go out in the astral body after death, harming other parts of life. I have seen it very vividly, so vividly that you would be amazed. And so I have seen very grave physical consequences come to people who have not understood this. And so whether it is a loved one, a relative, or a neighbor, or just someone in the earth that is not of the light, it is important to use the Friday night service to call for the binding of that ka, which is the astral body, the astral sheath. It has a disintegration period, and before it is fully disintegrated, it can work great works of darkness. So to call for anyone who has passed on to be taken to their appropriate level is important. And there are 33 levels in a descending scale of darkness to hell or the astral plane. The first level is the least dark, and it goes all the way down to 33. Then there are 33 levels in an ascending scale of the octaves of light. And so depending on an individual's attainment in light, that individual may be in the 5th heaven or the 10th heaven or the 25th heaven or whatever. Depending on how evil an individual has been, they are in deeper levels of the astral plane. So that they are consigned to the proper level of their evolution, the proper schoolroom where they can make the best progress. That is a simple call that you make, and you call to Archangel Michael and Mighty Astrea to see to it that it is done. That way, you put the individual out of the way of being able to roam about and to work works of destruction. When you don't make it for a soul of light, then that soul may be caught where they have passed on, or caught in the lower octaves, and not be able to go where they belong. Anyone who passes on in this entire church worldwide is instructed to also leave in their will the instructions that their family should notify me that they have passed on, when and where. The where is important because we go in search of that soul, make the calls to the angels to take that one to octaves of light. Sometimes when families are not in the church, we don't hear of a person's passing for 6 months or more. And when I do hear about it and I make the call, oftentimes the person is exactly where they were when they passed on, and actually knowingly waiting for me to make the call, which is why what we want to do on Friday nights is make the call for all light bearers who've passed on to be taken to octaves of light. Many times, in order for an individual to allow the angels of light to take him to the octaves of light, I must give that person instruction and tell them that they must receive the angels, they must bend the knee before the Christ, and allow themselves to be taken. So that's one reason why some light bearers are not taken in answer to the group calls of our services. It is a tremendous joy to see a keeper of the flame of long standing, of many years of devoutness on the path, come to the place where they are received in high octaves of light and in the schools of the brotherhood, and many times to prepare for their ascension, for they will embody no more. So that is the result of this teaching having been on this planet in this century, and we've seen many ascensions take place as a result of people taking the teachings and applying them. And some of them have not even made their way to our headquarters. Some of them have been confined in nursing homes, and they have never stopped keeping the flame year in, year out. Some of the sweetest people that I could even tell you about, and the most wonderful people. One thing they have had in common, it's an amazing thing, but they reach a point where they see the messengers at inner levels, and they witness to the messengers. And their witness and their love and their devotion and their gratitude is so full. And I've had them express this to me in person, sometimes on their deathbed, sometimes in letters. And through that office and through that path, they see the opening of God to them. They see the opening of heaven. And it is just, to me, a most amazing devotion to realize how the saints in heaven and the saints on earth support this church, support this movement, and support the ascended masters and their messengers and the teachings. So I can tell you there's nothing more gratifying to me in the world than to give the teachings of the Great White Brotherhood and see this happening. And since I've been here since 1961, and I came into a movement where nobody was younger than 50 when I was about 22, I've had the privilege of making the calls to escort many, many souls of light to their ultimate victory. And of course, most of them, except where families interfered, have been cremated. So I would like to tell you 2 additional things about cremation. Number 1, unless you are convinced that there is foul play and you will not rest easy unless you know, you should not have an autopsy done. But if you want to know the cause of death because you are concerned about how a person died, then you should go ahead and have the autopsy done and request that all organs and anything that has been disturbed will be with the body in the cremation ritual. Secondly, it is a rule of thumb that students on the path who expect to make their ascension do not donate organs. We are not organ donors. I found, however, that there was an exception to this rule in a case that I dealt with this year, where the person had a serious karma and was intended to re-embody to continue balancing her karma, that in that individual case, Linello told me it was all right for that person to donate their organs. However, it was not volunteered in time, and so all that they were able to use was the skin, which was an additional way that this person could balance karma. I cannot tell you that that is the case in all cases, but where you are fairly certain that you are moving into the ascension, it should not be a choice. So I would say if you have any questions about this, that you address them to me if the time comes in case of relatives. I should recommend to you then that you educate any relatives for whom you will be responsible, simply by the fact that you may be younger and the person who is the responsible party, that you will educate them to cremation in terms of their own language. If they have a mindset by their religious conviction, just leave them alone and make the calls when the time comes for the light to be withdrawn and the astral body to be encircled. We're now going to turn to page 135. To return to the Inkalithlan and the ceremonial of my adoption by Prince Menax. As we stood beside the Maxin stone, Wallen bade me kneel, and then placing his hand upon my head, spoke, saying, in harmony with the laws of the land, made and provided in such cases, Astika Menax, a counselor of the land of Poseid, hath a wish to adopt thee, Zailm Numinos, for a son unto his name, in place of one departed, hence into Navazamin. Wherefore, as thy sovereign and as his, I, Wallen, Rai of Poseid, do declare it to be as prayed for by Astika Menax. The Inkalith completed the ceremonies by placing his right hand upon my head and his left upon that of Menax, as we knelt before him, and invoking the blessing of Inkal upon us both. As he removed his hands, he addressed me thus, be thou erect in the sight of Inkal, that no man may accuse thee truthfully. This do, and thy days shall be long, but even as thou shalt fail, so then shall thy time be shortened. May the peace of Inkal be with thee. Not one of the three hearers of the Inkalith understood him to mean that my days would be short because I would fail in rectitude, but only as a warning were the words taken. Yet I knew afterwards all too late what prescience guided Maitreya in his words, knew in a flood of bitter memory which recalled how recreant I had been to the high resolve on Pitak Rock to be successful as a result of being true to my divine God-considering selfhood. But all this came, as I thought, too late. Too late was it when I lay in a dungeon awaiting death, from which no mortal could save me, and dreamed that my soul sat on a verdureless shore looking across a limitless ocean and crying, ah, where is the hope of my years? Bitter and fiery was the remorseful agony, but my name was still on the book of life, still there, and not erased as I feared. Karma is inexorable and severe, my brother, my sister, but our Savior hath said, follow me. He that hath an ear to hear, let him hear. Be ye doers of the word and not hearers only. As we turned away, an Inkala who had been present began playing on the great organ of the temple. Then the silences of the vast auditorium responded, as no human voice could make them do. On the winds the bells' deep tones are swelling. The echoes rang again and again as the thundering voices of the great organ pealed forth, thrilling the soul with its mighty harmony. Rays of many-hued light, some brilliant, some soft-tinted, as those of a spectroscopic image of the moon, played from point to point in exhausted air tubes, and as the colors changed, so did the notes of music. For every ray of light, whatsoever its source, is a pulsating choral note if developed rightly. Thus the stars sing. The ride did not go with Menax and myself when the conclusion of our business was reached, but remained with the Inkalith Maitreya. With him, Wallen was more familiar, his friendship more deeply intimate than with any other human being. And the reason was that both he and Maitreya were sons of the solitude, and had been youths together in the days ere public favor had marked the one for Rai, the other for Inkalith, these both being elective positions, the office of high priest being the only ecclesiastical office which could be filled by popular vote. And this exception was because it was considered true justice to allow the people to consult their own desires in this matter of choosing one whom all believed to be the most eminently good and perfect example of moral life, to be over them in this highest spiritual office. But in the days of their youth, neither had seemed to expect the preferment which the years had in store, and after the long course required of Zayo Inkali at the Zayo Quithlan, both had bidden the world of men adieu and had gone forth into the solitudes of the vast mountains, where only the sons of Inkal had abode of all mankind. These men were the theocristic or occult adepts of the olden age, the Yug Vidya of their time. They were indeed chary of their wisdom then as now, but to Wallen and Mainen they imparted it without stint. They had no families then, nor do these students of God, of nature, deviate now from the same celibate principles. None who hope to achieve their deep knowledge will mate. After years had flown, so many that men had almost forgotten them, Wallen and Mainen did what few had ever been known to do, return to the haunts of ordinary humanity. My father Menax had been but a babe when Wallen went away, and the latter's sister was not then born. Yet when Wallen came back, the silvery threads of age already gleamed in the hair of the Prince Menax, while as for the rye that was to be, he looked a little more mature, but otherwise unchanged from the youthful semblance of the days of yore. In the interim, his sister had come to the world, grown to womanhood, wedded Menax, and after bringing into life their son Soris and their daughter Anzime, had gone into the undiscovered country through the Maxin gateway. Mainen, too, was of a similarly youthful appearance. Both of these sons of the solitude came back, giving as their reason for return that their presence was needed, and both were eventually chosen by the people to fill the respective positions which we have seen them occupying, positions rendered vacant by the death of the incumbents. It is only now, after 12,000 years have slipped into eternity through the back door of time, that I have come to know how much Mainen had to do with those events, and how wholly in the dark concerning his real character was Wallen and every other son of the solitude. Not to anticipate, is it strange that Rai Wallen felt more pleasurably intimacy possible in his intercourse with Mainen than with any other person connected with his daily life, or that he felt his finally exposed treachery more keenly than anyone else could? I think not. And so, as some of you may know, what Phylos is telling us is Mainen, the high priest of Atlantis in this period, was a black magician. And in the light of that, you can see that the blessing, quote, that he gave in the words in this adoption ceremony was actually a curse, and it was a prophecy of Zailm's failure, which he himself, this high priest, was working all of his life to bring about. And so think of this. Be thou erect in the sight of Inkle, that no man may accuse thee truthfully. This do, and thy days shall be long. But even as thou shalt fail, see, he's making a fiat with all of his power here. But even as thou shalt fail, so then shall thy time be shortened. May the peace of Inkle be with thee. He's saying, if you fail, but it's in the words of a fiat, but even as thou shalt fail, so then shall thy time be shortened. So what is coming out of this is that this Mainen, the high priest, knows that he cannot touch him so long as he is true to Inkle, his god. He also knows just how much he can step over the line of doing his black magic. So he gives him the command, be thou erect in the sight of Inkle, that no man may accuse thee truthfully. He must thus admonish him to prepare him to pass his test, but he immediately follows it with a curse. So he's always treading the line where he is karma dodging. He's avoiding the karma of his deeds and attempting to arrange that things that happen because he may have subtly led someone astray, and then that person allows himself to be the tool of evil. No doubt, this black magician was contributing to the decay and the fall of Atlantis. But he was of such a great level of adeptship that he hid this even from a son of the solitude and perhaps others. I've always found that Chilas on the path can never understand why or how a black magician could conceal himself even from those with attainment and could move in their midst and work treachery and intrigue and darkness and yet not be discovered. I will read you an example of this from the I Am books at our next meeting, and also take up with you the 2 commands that Phylos gives. This is a key entering into the book of the topic of karma. Karma is inexorable and severe, my brother, my sister, but our Savior hath said, follow me. He that hath an ear to hear, let him hear. Be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only. Following Jesus is tying yourself to his sacred heart, binding yourself to him as his disciple and Chela. Jesus knows, and so does Phylos know, that you must have as a guru an ascended master. And as we have said, Jesus is the one who has volunteered to bear our karma and whom God sent that we might affix or attach ourselves to him as disciples so that we may be received by other ascended masters. But he is the door, I am the door, and no man will enter by any other door. No man cometh to the Father but by me. So what the teaching of the ascended masters does is it builds on a very solid foundation of the Old and New Testaments. And when we have taken that foundation and pursued it and followed it and lived our lives according to its true teachings and the true inner esoteric teachings that are given, we are being prepared to be a true Chela with a capital C of a real and living guru and ascended master. So the follow me is a very important text to pursue in scriptures, which I will do with you. And the second is doers of the word and not hearers only. To be a hearer of the word only is to be in a karma-making mode. Better not even hear the word if you are not going to do it. Jesus points to those who are the true doers of the word and those who are the hypocrites and the false priests of his time. So we will look at that because this book is preeminently an understanding of karma and the grace of intercession, but it makes clear again and again that we are not exempt from balancing our karma. Please stand. Beloved, mighty I am presence, I call for the sealing of each and every soul. Beloved, holy Christ's self, seal these souls in the heart of God, in the heart of Maitreya, in the mind of Christ, Christ Jesus, Lord Kuthumi. We are grateful for your sponsorship and your presence. We call now for the victory of the light and the enlightenment of these souls and a true understanding of the demands of the law of karma that are incumbent upon every life stream in the entire matter cosmos. Almighty God, I call for realism in each one's perception of the law of karma, of personal karma, of planetary karma, and of the nature of karma that is inexorable, and of the nature of karma that may receive mitigation, and wherein we might know grace through the sacred heart of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Unto Maitreya, Buddha, Gautama Buddha, Sanat Kumara, the Divine Mother, in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the Divine Mother. Amen. Thank you.